Welcome everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to Optimizing vSAN with vRealize Operations. In this session today, we'll be talking about how our customers can use vRealize Operations to manage their vSAN estates. And we have a customer, an actual customer here that's using the product here to relate his experiences. Before we get started though, disclaimer, we won't really be talking about any futures in here, so nothing to worry about that on that front. But anything you do here along those lines could potentially change, could be subject to change. So take that stuff with a grain of salt. I'm an engineer. You're an engineer. You're an engineer. We don't talk pricing and packaging, so no worries on that. Okay, by way of introduction, I'm John Diaz. I'm a Senior Technical Marketing Manager with the Cloud Management BU. So the vRealize Operations side of the story is where I come in. And then Pete, if you want to introduce.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Pete Keeler, and I'm a Senior Technical Marketing Manager in the Storage and Availability Business Unit here at VMware. My primary focus is vSAN and core storage, but primarily focused on vSAN, vSAN performance, vSAN integrations, analytics, and so forth.
And our special guest star, Michael Merritt. Michael, if you want to introduce yourself.
I'm Michael Merritt with Southern Company, based in Birmingham, Alabama, and I'm in our virtualization infrastructure team. I'm a senior analyst in our group, and we are vRealize Operations and vSAN customers.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael. We're glad to have you here. And what we're going to do as far as an agenda today, Michael's going to start out and give us a good overview of the environment at Southern Company, tell us a little bit about what he's got going on there. And then we'll jump in and talk about how vRealize, VMware vRealize is helping customers to manage the SDDC, in particular HCI, with vSAN technology. And then we'll go into some demos. We'll look at some specific product capabilities where we'll discuss the features that are available. And then what we'd like to do is at the end, we want to make sure we get through all the material so that you get the benefit of everything that we see. So you can hold your questions at the end. We'll be sure to leave time, and we'll use the microphone stand here to do that. So without further ado, Michael, if you want to jump in and start telling us about Southern Company, the clicker's right there, and all yours.
So Southern Company is based in Atlanta, Georgia. We are in the utility industry. We run 11 regulated utilities across a 9-state service footprint. We serve approximately 9 million customers in that service footprint. Our main subsidiary companies, our operating companies, include Georgia Power, Alabama Power, Mississippi Power, Gulf Power, Southern Company Gas, and a number of other subsidiaries, all related in the energy utility sector. Our virtual infrastructure is mainly located within 2 physical data centers, the primary being in Atlanta, Georgia, and our secondary is in Birmingham, Alabama. Across those 2 data centers, we run 280 ESX hosts, hosting approximately 4,400 virtual machines, and we have 3.5 petabytes of storage in our virtual environment. Of that environment, 150 of those hosts are running VMware vSAN for our storage platform on hyperconverged infrastructure on Dell vSAN Ready nodes. We're running about 2,700 VMs in that environment with 2.75 petabytes of storage on vSAN today. The remainder is on other Dell hardware backed with EMC vMax storage. Our vSAN environment currently is on vSAN 6.2. We're on vSphere 6.0 Update 3. And we're currently planning our upgrade to vSphere 6.5U1 with vSAN 6.6. As far as vRealize Operations goes, we're on the latest release, which is vRops 6.6.1, and we have a 4-node analytics cluster and 2 additional remote collectors that are gathering data for our environment. John, I think that's an overview of what we're running.
Okay, great. Yeah, so just one question for you with regards to the types of workloads that you run in your vSAN environment. Are those production workloads, development? Is it a mix?
It's a mix. It's primarily production. We have made the decision to use vSAN as our primary storage platform moving forward. And so we are running all of our production, including business critical and key financial applications on that platform.
Okay. And you also, earlier we were talking, you also mentioned you all are using Log Insight in addition to vRealize operations. Is it
We
correct?
are. We also have the latest version of Log Insight gathering logs for all of that environment.
Okay, fantastic. Well, we'll go ahead and get started, Michael. That was a great overview, and we'll hear more from Michael as we go through this about some of his practical experiences with vSAN and with vRealize operations, managing that vSAN. What I'd like to talk about now is how VMware is helping customers with their SDDC environments and monitoring and managing those environments. So if you look at the vRealize Suite Standard, which comprises vRealize Operations, Log Insight, a couple of products we talked about here, and what that brings to the table in terms of that SDDC or that HCI architecture based on vSAN, is it gives customers quick time to value in terms of being able to monitor or manage their vSAN estate. And by that I mean you may have multiple vSAN clusters, you may have multiple vCenters running those clusters, and this gives you a single place to look to visualize everything that's going on within that environment in context of the rest of the stack. So your compute as well, and other components within the virtual environment, and it gives you complete control and visibility of your SDDC environment as well. Pete, anything to add on to that?
Yeah, one of the things that certainly with vSAN 6.6, which is the latest and greatest, in fact vSAN 6.6.1, there were significant improvements made in the APIs that expose this data to the other solutions such as vRealize Operations and vRealize Log Insight. It's really key in order for us to expose that data in the right way so that these other tools can measure that data in the right way from the right location. That's really important for the consistency and making sure that we're presenting the accurate data.
Yeah, absolutely. And you see that across our product line with the development and improvement with our APIs. And so those APIs are definitely a critical component of the software-defined data center. So vRealize Operations, particularly with vSAN management, gives very good comprehensive visibility for capacity management, performance, and just the overall health of the clusters within the environment. So if you haven't seen vRealize Operations 6.6, actually we've just released 6.6.1, we brought in-house vSAN management into the product. So before there was an additional management pack that you had to install. Now you get that capability at any version. It's standard, advanced, or enterprise. And I can talk about some of the differences in the capabilities or the features that you get with that. But we want all of our customers being able to manage their vSAN environment natively with vRealize Operations as part of the SDDC stack. So it comes with a lot of rich content that we'll see as we get into some of the demos. But it really gives, that, like I said, that more comprehensive capability, for your vSAN. In addition, Log Insight has had for some time very good vSAN visibility, and in terms of the logging. So if you combine the two together, vRealize Operations kind of tells you what is going on in the environment. Log Insight tells you why something is happening. So it's really that last mile of troubleshooting, that event by event correlation, so you can drill in and get specific details. And Pete has a good demo that he'll go to on that.
Yeah, and also I would add, to Michael, you also run Log Insight, is that right?
We do. Yeah, we're on Log Insight 4.5.
Mm-hmm.
And you're running the vSAN content pack with that
we
as well?
We do, and we have the integration between vRops and Log Insight, both products integrated both ways as well.
How helpful has that been to you as far as your troubleshooting capability?
So the great thing about that is when you have an event that you are trying to troubleshoot, being able to jump between either product, there are links between both products so you can see an event or an object in context in the other product and jump between the two. And that really helps you saves a lot of time trying to troubleshoot issues.
Okay, great. Outstanding. So let's get into some specifics. Let's look at some of the details of what we're doing with this capability within vRealize operations. And if you look at the adoption of vSAN for our customers, what we're really trying to do is help them along the journey. And you can be at any point in this continuum and get benefit from vRealize operations management of vSAN. But initially, for those customers that are just going down the path of deploying vSAN or considering vSAN, by the way, how many folks are running vSAN today in the environment? Okay, that's what I figured. This would be a big draw for the vSAN folks.
And one follow-up question, how many are running vSAN 6.6 or newer? All right.
Okay,
Good, thanks.
So if you're considering it, or you are extending your vSAN out to other parts of your environment, one of the things that vRealize operations can do from a consolidated standpoint is show you the health and fitness of your environment in terms of that vSAN readiness. We know that vSAN provides really good detailed health reporting, but having that consolidated in one place, and even alerting when you have configuration drift, or you have new servers that come online, drivers that may not be compatible or qualified, where you otherwise expect this to be, a vSAN ready environment. So that's the kind of problems that we're solving there. Then we get into operationalizing vSAN. So as you move into the state of, hey, we're comfortable with vSAN, we're using vSAN, we're starting to put workloads on it, you want to understand how your migration to vSAN, for example, is impacting the VMs that are moving, the applications that are moving. So you want to monitor the performance there and see, hey, we're getting, X, scale benefit from moving to our all-flash arrays, where before our latencies were, at 8 or 9 milliseconds. Now they've dropped down to 2 or 3 milliseconds, whatever the case may be. So we can give you that visibility with historical context in vRealize operations to show you that trending over time. And when changes are made in the environment, one good example you gave me the other day was, I want to change a storage policy, but I'm curious about how that might have impacted a workload. Right.
Yeah, without a doubt. Since vSAN has such granularity when it comes to the performance and the protection policies, you want to really understand what sort of impact that has, not only on the VM, but the overall infrastructure. And the combination of the intelligence that is gathered by the vSAN performance service, then hooked into via the APIs into vRealize operations, allows you to see that short-term and long-term impacts of making those policy changes.
Exactly. So, and the last pillar, which I think is probably the most important, or the most interesting to me at least, and Michael, you can tell us if you agree or disagree, but the ability to understand your capacity, so that optimize and scale, and when do I need to add more capacity, when do I need to add more components for improved performance. So those types of things, as you are running vSAN from a day 2 standpoint, are very important to understand. Any comments on that at all, Michael? Or?
Yeah, that's been our biggest use case for vRealize operations, has been around the capacity management and specifically around vSAN capacity. So in our previous environment, when everything was hosted on the SAN, we had an enterprise storage team. We have an enterprise storage team that managed that SAN. With vSAN, that responsibility is shifted into the virtualization infrastructure team. And so we now have to understand the capacity of our storage platform. And VROPS is a tool that gives us insight to help us understand that capacity and also project it forward to understand what our future capacity will be.
And that's a great use case, a great example of how we can empower the virtual infrastructure teams as they adopt vSAN to have more control over their environments or their own destiny. Finally, the last thing I would mention is troubleshooting. One of the things, particularly if you're an early, if you're a new adopter of vSAN, there may be a little hesitance. Maybe you're not as familiar. You're used to the storage team managing their storage arrays, and some of the troubleshooting concepts around storage in general may be new to you. Some of the under the hood stuff. So we made that very easy with the management package you'll see, giving you a step-by-step troubleshooting workflow for vSAN, so you can very easily identify where problems are based on best practices and KPIs that we know at VMware are things that your typical vSAN administrator or virtual administrator who understands vSAN would be looking at. So you don't have to be an expert to operationalize, run, troubleshoot vSAN. All right, let's get into the specific content. I'll just go over an overview of the dashboard content that's included with this management capability, and then we'll look at, actually walk through a demo. The first is an operational overview, and the section 1 there just gives you that broad view of all of my vSAN environments, on any vCenter server out there, any clusters, wherever they may be deployed. So I get a bird's eye view of that environment, and then I can drill down into specific details of individual vSAN clusters and look at those on a case-by-case basis. This is a great display for maybe a NOC, for example, that's looking at or monitoring the environment, and they just want to understand at a high level, hey, what's going on? As our alert trending increased, what about our KPIs for latency and those types of things. The next is the capacity overview. Again, one of my favorites. We start with that high level visibility of your vSAN, all your vSAN environments, and tell you what components make up that entire vSAN environment, and then what available storage you have, as well as trending information right there on the top line. And again, step 2 below, you can start to drill into specific clusters, environments, and look at those to get detailed information about things like not only capacity, but dedupe and compression ratios. We'll see in the demo very powerful visualization or understanding of the value you're getting out of the more expensive SSD or flash drives than the spinning disk.
Yeah, one of the things I would say here on this that is really interesting is the fact that if you look at just vSAN and what is offered in the performance service with respect to the capacity, it will always show you the point in time capacity, but you don't know from a historical perspective, is that trending up, and if so, at what rate? Here we have, in a very consistent manner, whether it's at the multi-cluster level or on a per cluster basis, that trend line of what sort of capacity utilization activity has been occurring. And then down lower on the screen, it will allow you to understand that relationship behind compute resources and capacity resources. And it's really interesting because I had a good conversation with Michael about this, and that, as it turns out, what I thought was really neat, that's very much one of the important parts that you and your team uses there with respect to capacity management.
Right. Yeah, like I said earlier, being able to understand that capacity and then as learning how we're going to scale up or scale out our vSAN infrastructure is critical for us to understand, and this has been the tool that's really helped us to get our hands around that and understand that and be comfortable with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think it's important too, because this is not a process of, hey, we'll build it and then we kind of forget about it. I mean, we all have to operationalize, and we've all been in that situation where things just get thrown over to the fence, especially if you're in an operational role. And I've been on both sides of the fence. I've been guilty of throwing things over the fence and go, hey, it's your problem to manage and worry about it. But we're giving you the tooling to be able to do that, to understand when you need to expand, when you need to grow, and where you can optimize too, as we'll see with some of this. And finally, third in that bottom section, the vSAN clusters they have the role of providing storage, but they're also serving up compute as well. So being able to understand the context of how the compute side of the house is handling servicing VMs as well as storage in a single view is a very powerful way. So I can see things like, am I running out of memory? Am I going to hit a threshold on, or am I going to hit a ceiling on CPU within the next 30, 60, 90, 180 days? So I can be proactive about managing that capacity. And then finally, that expert dashboard that I talked about with troubleshooting vSAN. It's a guided step-by-step dashboard. We start, they're all numbered, paint by numbers basically. One, pick the vSAN cluster that you want to troubleshoot. 2, start looking at alerts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we go from the very simple in that first section there of just a broader overview of what's going on in the environment. Not that there's anything actionable at that point, but it kind of lays the land of what you may want to look for in the following steps. And then as you go through in the other steps, as you'll see in the demonstration, we ask in very simple, plain language. You know, are my VMs experiencing latency? You know, how's my read cache? And you know, how many IOPS am I serving? So those kind of questions that a storage administrator would normally ask as they're going through their troubleshooting workflow, we've just translated that into this easy to follow dashboard. This is just a follow-on example. The troubleshooting dashboard is actually one of the bigger dashboards. It goes down quite a way. I think there's something like about 18 questions that are asked. It's not intimidating in any way, but it's very thorough in the coverage. We start at that cluster level, go down to the disk groups, then into the hosts, and then we end up at the physical disks themselves. So you get complete top to bottom visibility throughout the environment, including things like for the disk, that individual disk, physical disk components, smart data that those disks may be reporting, write errors, read errors, heat, you know, temperature, those types of things. All right, so let's go ahead and look real quick at a demonstration of the, let's see, 5. Of the dashboards to just give you a little better flavor for what's going on. Oops. Okay. I'd like to start off with the capacity dashboard first. Again, this is one of my favorites. And what you'll notice on this dashboard is that you have those capacity contributors. You know, what is making up my total vSAN estate, how many hosts, how many disk groups, data stores, et cetera. And each of these has kind of this, the immediate, you know, last reading for all of the metrics that we display here. And then underneath, you'll see the trend line like Pete was talking about earlier. So I understand very quickly where I am currently and what I've been doing over the past 6 hours, you know, day, whatever you want to set the time frame to. And that's really important in understanding, especially in terms of capacity. It's important in understanding it's like, hey, as I'm moving workloads in or I'm moving new applications in, you know, how much impact am I having on the environment? And if we look too at the total capacity, you can see, for example, our total capacity hasn't really changed, but our used disk space metric has been changing over time. It's had some peaks and troughs, so we can actually click on this, drill in it a little bit closer, and as we look at this, we can see that, yeah, we had a real big uptick in storage capacity usage over time, and then it kind of tapered off. And you could correlate this very easily to some event that happened in your environment, maybe as part of a migration path or something like that. This could also identify any savings you may have, any capacity savings you may have realized by a reclamation exercise. Another component to this dashboard is we'll show you VMs that have been powered off. And if those things are powered off or idle VMs, probably don't want them sitting on expensive flash storage in your vSAN. You want to move those off somewhere else. So we'll show you that information as well. Then over here we have, of course, the capacity, the dedupe and compression. But what I like is when I select a particular cluster here, I get dedupe and compression ratios. So I'm seeing the benefit that I'm getting on a cluster by cluster basis for dedupe and compression and how much I'm actually saving within those environments. And so it's a little hard to see here, but it says, what it says is usage with dedupe and compression, and then usage without dedupe and compression. So we even compare it for you to show. And I think this is really important and Michael, maybe you can weigh in here, but as you're kind of advocating for, hey, this is great in hybrid, it'd really be better if we just spent a few extra bucks and bought, all flash vSAN storage. And this is a good way to validate that was the right decision, right?
Exactly. When you compare, even if the raw cost of all flash storage may still be just a little bit higher than spinning disk, although that's changing by the day, but when you factor in the gains that you get with dedupe, compression, and so forth, and that this tool gives you the ability to show very quickly and justify your additional cost spend on all flash storage.
Absolutely. Okay, and then as we go down further in this particular dashboard, we can see the capacity usage for our disks that make up or the disk groups that make up that cluster, and we can see if we have evenly balanced our data between those components that make up the environment. So we're making sure that we're getting most efficient usage. Now, Pete, you can talk a little bit about how vSAN automatically rebalances and the thresholds that are kind of set by default. But this is a good way to not necessarily take over what vSAN's doing, but just to validate maybe that you have your settings correctly, or maybe you need to be more or less aggressive.
Yeah. So the key here is simply visibility. When we have a distributed storage system that's fully integrated, like vSAN, it's really intelligent and it's really efficient at doing a number of different things, rebalancing, resyncing that data to ensure the protection and the performance policies that you've applied to those given objects. Now, in this case here, we're seeing what is effectively a heat map for the drives that are contributing to that storage. And the heat map itself is going to show a point in time over the past, let's say, 15 minutes. But within each heat map, you're going to be able to see the historical trend of that physical device. And that's going to give you a good understanding. We can't, and we certainly don't want to jump to any conclusions if we don't have the right visibility to understand what the potential issue might be. And so this really, when we are looking at vRealize operations and this integrated view of vSAN, it's all about providing the visibility so that you can see the right kind of data.
Absolutely. So another thing that we show you, with that improved visibility or visualization, again, is since these clusters are doing more than just serving up vSAN, we want to make sure that we're not overburdening them from just a compute standpoint. So we give you the capacity information down here below for things like memory and CPU, and we show you the time remaining. So you can see in this particular environment, our disk time remaining is a little less based on trending than, say, our CPU and memory. So we know that that's an area we need to target first for any expansion that we may need to do. Maybe it's getting close to budget time, and your manager's like, hey, what do we need to buy next quarter or next year? You can look at this chart and very easily say, yeah, I think we're going to need more storage, for example. And then finally, storage reclamation opportunities, where I talked about, I've got idle workloads consuming this very expensive, flash storage. I want to move those off into less expensive storage, or maybe they just need to be deleted. We should give you that, and it's an actionable task that you can actually perform from this dashboard.
And John, I would add here, this goes back to something that Michael mentioned as far as one of the strategies they use with regards to resource planning with respect to the capacity versus the compute, is that if you can see what is being forecasted as far as the overall capacity requirements and the compute requirements, and then we know that from a vSAN perspective, you can strategically approach your purchasing and your design in such a way that you can purchase a host where, let's say, 2/3 of the drive bays are filled up, so that you would build that host out initially, and then maybe in 12 or 18 months you can add those additional drives so that you scale up each individual host, being able to take advantage and ride that hardware wave, introduce the new faster, more dense flash devices to increase that capacity without increasing the number of physical hosts. Now, Or if you need that more compute, then accordingly, you can scale out. And it sounds like that you and your team, Michael, that's really a really important part of your overall strategy.
It is. Something else I see on this dashboard that we make frequent use of is in the reclamation section there, with the ability to identify snapshot sprawl and reclaim space from those snapshots. I think that's a common issue that probably every customer environment deals with. It's certainly been with the number of VMs that we run. We frequently find large, snapshots that need to be cleaned up, and this dashboard is one thing that we've used to help identify and then go back and remediate those.
Yeah, that's a great point, and a good segue too to the troubleshooting dashboard, because that's another component that I like to point out is, people say, hey, I'm experiencing latency or slow performance on this virtual machine. And one of the things I would look at first is, do you have sort of some really old snapshots out there, or large snapshots that could be contributing to that? Very easy thing to do, and from this troubleshooting dashboard, very actionable task that you could just perform by doing that. But just to show you the troubleshooting dashboard itself, we start with picking a vSAN cluster in the environment. When we do that, we see the alerts that not only pertain to the cluster itself, but the VMs that are residing on that vSAN data store, so we know what objects are impacted. Now we can do some troubleshooting from here and read through the alerts if we want. My recommendation would be, hey, put that in your pocket for right now, maybe something to come back to and look at, but let's drill a little bit deeper and find out maybe what else is going on in the environment. So as we do that, we can see things like, are the relatives healthy? Nothing is an island in a virtual infrastructure. So I have vSAN clusters that are reliant on hosts, they're reliant on things like networking, et cetera. So it's important for me to understand in context, vSAN may be healthy, but there may be an issue at the host level or at the cluster level that I need to investigate. So I get very quick detail about that here, and I can even highlight some of those and click on the alerts for that specific object and see, does that object have any alerts that I need to, look into deeper. So it kind of puts that alert, all the alerts listed on the left-hand side or right-hand side into better context. And then for the KPIs, is the cluster busy? And we have, you don't have to go searching for the metrics that you may want to look at. We have, the most critical metrics that you may want to look at. Been troubleshooting vSAN right here for you, so things like CPU, memory, capacity remaining, et cetera. And we have, again, those the immediate readings, the current readings, and then, a trend line. So this is helpful too if you're troubleshooting an event that may have passed. Someone mentions to you, this web application was slow this morning, seems okay now, could you look at it? So you can come here and use that historical information to do some contextual troubleshooting. A correlation is the word I'm looking for, sorry. And then as I mentioned, then we start just asking very, plain language questions. Are VMs facing read latency? And as you look at each of these charts are pretty cool because I can click on them and I can do things like zoom in on specific time periods. Again, if I'm trying to correlate something that may have happened in the past with some of the other issues that I'm finding on this dashboard, I can do that. And then as we go down further, we start to look at the lower level now. Now we're below the cluster level and we're looking at the disk groups. And I can look at the read performance, the write performance, and the heat map display, as Pete really explained earlier. Same type of thing, but I'm looking at, hey, is my problem related to maybe my inability to serve up read IOs from cache? And in my particular lab, I don't know if this is the case in your lab or if you've seen this in production, Michael, but I struggle with, I have like a really small, 100 gig flash drives, and they just get overrun. So, having this type of information to know at a sub-level where you need to concentrate your expansion, I think is a pretty powerful thing, right? Okay, and then finally, we get down to the host level where we look at individual hosts and we look at the KPIs related to those individual hosts. Going down further, we get into the actual disks themselves, and we can even go to the disks and look at these heat maps in different views. So we can look at things like not only the bus resets and commands per second, but as you saw, smart data as well. So anything that the drives themselves are reporting up, we can look at and troubleshoot. Now, vSAN has great capability to manage dying disk, and this is certainly something that we're aware of through those APIs in vRealize Operation 6.6. We know that's happening. So maybe we can talk a little bit about what that means from the standpoint of vSAN's doing its job, but why we would want to monitor that with vRealize Operations.
Yeah, without a doubt here. So the reason why in this particular case we want to present smart data about the physical devices themselves is that it's an additional data point with respect to is there an issue with the physical drive. Now vSAN in and of itself does not use the smart data from a physical device, and there's a very specific reason why. Smart is it's a sort of an industry standard, and it's a very open standard. It's subject to each and every manufacturer to employ various aspects in order to send that metadata back to the intelligence, the next layer up, in order to report what is on that device. It really varies from physical device to physical device, so it's not very reliable, but it's, again, an additional data point. In vSAN, we have a feature called degraded device handling, or DDH, and that looks at periodic periods of time where it's going to look at the latency characteristics of the device, and that's going to be the leading indicator of these physical devices that may be failing at some point. Most modern physical devices, and primarily flash, are not binary in their failure. You're going to see characteristics with that failure, and that's what we really look at with respect to vSAN. Now, tying back to the APIs, what's really important there is that we can alert that vSAN's going to take care of the evacuation of data off of that impending bad drive, but we can report to vRealize Operations what activity is occurring so that you're aware of what activity is occurring. Again, it's all about visibility, but they're working together in the right way so that the end user, the administrator, has a better understanding of what's going on.
Yeah, and I think having visibility to the impact on any back-end operations that are happening on vSAN, you know, I know there's always angst. I wore a storage administrator hat at one point in my life, and you know, one of the things that we were very cognizant of is I'm replacing a failed drive and doing a rebuild, for example, on an array. How's that impacting the workload? You know, and a lot of those things are unpredictable, you know, in terms of how long it takes to resolve those situations. And vSAN has some very powerful capabilities to kind of control and mitigate that. But with VROps, we give you that visibility so you can say, hey, is this something I need to worry about? Or everything seems to be fine, right? Michael, just real quick, I mean, having this deep visibility from the vSAN cluster all the way down to the physical disk, what does that mean for a Southern company?
So having all this visible in the heat map format really lets us drill into the hot spots, the things that are orange and red in the environment, and validating, going back to the heat map of the like the rebalance functionalities to get visibility into that and validate that. You know, we had some SRs early on with our adoption of vSAN related to the rebalance functionality, and VROps and that heat map showing that is allowing us now to have that visibility and acknowledge that, of course, those issues have now been fixed, but we can validate that it continues to operate as we expected with the tool.
Awesome. Thanks. Okay, well, we'll move along now. We didn't touch on all of the dashboards, but those are two of my favorites, I think, and I hope you agree. If you're not running vRealize operations 6.6, if you haven't upgraded yet, I really encourage you to do that, especially if you're on vSAN 6.6. You get all this rich capability through the improved API extensibility that Pete mentioned earlier. So we'll actually go back from here and go back to our slide. I talked about this a little bit in terms of the vSAN alerting, but what we're doing is we're not only making you aware of things that are happening that could impact the vSAN environment in terms of misconfigurations or health issues or networking issues and so forth, but we're also letting you know, again, not that there's anything you need to do about it, but we're letting you know that vSAN is busy doing its job on the back end, just so you'll have that awareness that, yeah, we're rebuilding a disk, we're handling a degraded disk situation, for example, and just to keep an eye on it. Otherwise, you may not know, and if on the off chance that it does become a problem, you want to mitigate your troubleshooting, or you want to shorten your troubleshooting time so you don't spend a lot of time, like Michael was talking about, having that visibility, having the ability to just look at the red blocks, go right to where the problem is, saves you a lot of time, right? And Pete's going to do a demo after this, but just real quick, we talked about the integration with Log Insight, and as you can see in here, with vRops 6.5, we began this integration with the 2, but it's much improved in 6.6. And some of the things that you'll see is, as you're doing your troubleshooting, like Michael was talking about, it's nice to be able in one window to be able to say, yeah, I'm troubleshooting problems with this cluster, I'm troubleshooting problems with a particular VM or a particular data store, and as I'm investigating that object, maybe I want to look at logging information, one-click button, and the query is already built for you. It goes right in context to that object and the time frame that you're investigating. So if you're troubleshooting an alert, for example, same kind of practice applies. So Pete, you want to?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go ahead and switch this over.
Okay, I'll do this button and you do that button.
Okay. And for the record here, I just love Log Insight. And really the reason why is because logs are awful to try to figure out what's going on. We've all been there, and it's really just brutal in so many different ways.
It's hard just to find where logs are a lot of times.
Absolutely. So part of the value of Log Insight with regards to any vSphere cluster, let alone a vSAN cluster, is that it's going to help aggregate a lot of that log data so that you can digest it in a somewhat human-readable format. And the key here is that with respect to vSAN, we can have those ties. It's going to bring in what are known as vSAN urgent traces, which is a subset of all of the log data that is generated during normal I/O operations within vSAN. So there's predefined dashboards, and what we're going to show here in this demonstration is we're going to take vSAN-based event messages that Log Insight is tracking, and then we're going to correlate it with non-vSAN-based activity, whether it's host CPU usage, host NIC usage, and things of that nature. So let's go ahead and get started here, and I'm just going to speak to what we're going to see here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to jump right into Log Insight, and we're going to go to an existing dashboard that shows absent components, and we're going to clone that to a brand new dashboard. We're just going to use that as our new starting point to make a custom dashboard. So we're just going to clone that. We're going to clone a network event dashboard over to this same new dashboard so that we can tweak it and adjust it based off of our needs. So now we're going to go to this new custom dashboard, and we're going to change the filter of these absent objects so it's restricted just to the actual hosts within the vSAN cluster. And we can see that there's activity there. There's there's components that went absent, but we don't know where and why. So what we're going to do is we're going to customize a network widget with a filter of vmnic star is down. And we're going to adjust this filter simply to include only the hosts within that vSAN cluster. And here we see that there are things that it found with regards to these events. And notice here the correlation between the components that went absent and the NICs on one of the hosts within the vSAN cluster, whether they were dropping or not. But that doesn't tell us exactly what host it's actually coming from. So let's go ahead and take that additional widget, and we're going to clone that once again. And we're going to isolate each one so that it's going to show the respective hosts for each host within the vSAN cluster. And we'll modify the filter so that it only shows that host. And we just run through this. It's all fairly easy to do. It auto-populates whatever you're going to type in with respect to each host within the vSAN cluster. And we'll run through this. And there's various ways to separate this out, but this was just going to be an easy way to really illustrate this. We see that no data has showed up yet after doing this for the first two hosts. So let's do it for the remaining two hosts. We don't see anything there, so we're going to do the fourth host. And there's all the errors. Now, you might think, okay, that's great, you very well scripted. No, this was happening in my lab. It happened for real. I was wondering why this activity was occurring in my lab. I had one of my hosts that had a 10 gig NIC that kept dropping on me for one reason or another, as it turned out some firmware issues. But this allowed me to go right where the problem was. And the creation of this custom dashboard was about minutes in real time. We had to sort of squeeze this down a little bit for the purposes of time. But it's really just a neat way to see the difference that you can make in saying, let's isolate a real problem here by bringing together various log event messages, some from vSphere, and what the kernel was seeing from network ports, and then the vSAN related data.
The thing that impresses me about this, Pete, is, and I've seen you do this before with Log Insight, is you're not combing through logs looking at event by event. You're using the analytics of Log Insight to build that correlation, to build visualizations from the logs. So it's much easier to consume that log data, versus just trying to map that out, I guess, in your mind or with pen and paper, right?
Yeah, and just simply by not, you really don't need to know much about the log data, but what this really helps you understand is seeing where there's a difference. And where our minds really can spot these inconsistencies in a really easy way. And so if we see those changes in the events, we can easily drill in on what those events were. And that's where the power of Log Insight really works well for the everyday administrator that isn't working in GSS at VMware and needs to have an intimate understanding of each and every item within the syntax of this unstructured data known as log data in order to figure out what the problem is.
Yeah, and I think what's neat about this is that most of us as system administrators, when we look at metric data, we're very comfortable looking at metric data. And if you're like me, you're looking for patterns. I see how my object normally behaves, and then I'm looking for any disruption in that. And this gives you the ability to do virtually the same thing with log data without having to understand that. Michael, any war stories from log data or using Log Insight from your
Just the ability to search and filter within Log Insight, the powerful search functionalities that are there are one of the things that helps us frequently when we're looking through logs. We're fairly new with our integration of Log Insight. We are still learning that product and developing our expertise, but we've already seen some value in helping to troubleshoot some issues like this with it.
Awesome. And on the vSAN side particularly, or just in general, or?
Yeah, both with host issues and vSAN specifically. Okay. It's helped us in both areas.
Awesome. Okay, well, let's go back to the presentation. One other thing, a couple other things I'll mention. We'll open it up for questions as well. But one of the things you can do with vRealize operations and with Log Insight is you can extend that to other IT tooling in your environment. So we have, you'll see the link there at the bottom. We have a solution known as Webhook Shims that allows you to translate any alert that you get from vRealize operations or from Log Insight into some action for ticketing systems, for messaging systems, even orchestration. So you can do complex workflows like I want to open up a ServiceNow ticket. I want to, and at the same time, maybe I want to attempt some baseline remediation that I would normally do in these types of situations, such as restarting a service or rebooting a VM, that type of thing. So this is really great capability that we have with it. Pete, do you want to promote some of your other sessions?
Yeah, since we have a lot of vSAN users, just really quick here, I have a few more sessions for the rest of the time here. One, if you're interested in interpreting storage performance metrics, stay tuned for that tomorrow. That's going to really offer some unique insight on a lot of different things. We have sort of day 2 operations for vSAN, and that is going to be tomorrow afternoon, and then wrapping it up, a day in the life of a vSAN IO. Some of you may have seen this in past years. We have some new material for this because it reflects the new features within vSAN. This is deep dive what's occurring within the data path, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And
I tell you what, I thought I knew storage, but every time I talk to Pete, I learn something new, and he really has a knack for explaining things in plain language. So I really recommend highly his sessions. Before we get into kind of the wrap-up stuff, we do want to open it up for what we may have for us or for Michael in particular.
So,
yeah.
So earlier also about dashboards, they had to talk, and I just noticed that they had on there about like the recache not being hit, like over like 90%, some other different things you have to deal with. If you were to run a cluster that's all flash, where the recache really doesn't matter because it reads from all things, not just through the caching tier, does vSAN notice that and actually change those dashboards or not, make it where they basically start flagging if it's not getting the recache?
So in the case, you're going to see those widgets within the dashboard are simply going to be blank in an all flash-based arrangement where there is no read cache that's occurring for any read requests.
Okay. Just a product change, the vRealize. It might be better instead of being blank. Because I know a lot of times we put in dashboards, like if I have to do the Horizon dashboard, if you configure correctly, they're all blank until it starts updating it. So it might be better to say not value, something to tell you that we're not showing data because this isn't all flash.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with you.
It was kind of hidden on that dashboard, but it does say does not pertain to or it says hybrid only. Yeah. Same thing on the dedupe and compression. Those will show up gray, but it says only for all flash arrays or something like that. So right now we do at least try to explain, but yeah, we're definitely looking to improve those widgets. Or if I don't have anything to display, just go away, type thing. Right?
I see them, I'm like, oh, I got something wrong.
Yeah. Immediately in your mind, you're like, wait, something's missing, right? Yeah, that's a good point. So.
These apply to other HCI solutions as well, not just the vSAN radios.
Right now, this is for vSAN.
Not the VxRail.
Oh,
yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it can run anywhere.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I would recommend. One is you want to take advantage of the pre-built dashboards that are with Log Insight. So many folks inside of VMware have done the heavy lifting for you and trying to figure out what are the really important elements within a string that's found in the logs itself. From there, I would then look at what sort of difference occurred over a given period of time. So if we know that from a troubleshooting perspective, at 1 a.m. something was going on, then you can start drilling down within the given time period and go into the interactive analytics there. And it's going to sort the number of event messages based off of what is most frequently within that time period. So when that raises to the surface, that's the one that you can focus on. And then, of course, Google's your friend as well on that.
Pete, I think something else related to that is one of the things we're finding with Log Insight is there's a lot of log data that's getting logged into Log Insight. We're trying to come at it with a perspective of what question are we trying to answer? Do we have an alert? Do we have an issue that we're trying to solve? And then search for logs or search within Log Insight related to that. We're kind of finding it's not a great approach to just look at Log Insight and try to interpret that raw log data and try to find issues within Log Insight. That's maybe not the way that it works best.
Yeah, I've done that too, where, you know, I'm having this problem, I'll go to a KB, and the KB typically says something like, you're seeing this in the logs. Well, no, I'm not, because I haven't looked at the logs yet, but now, right, to validate that. So, yeah, that's a good approach, Mark. Yes?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a microphone here.
Do you use top of the rack switches, you know, for the vSAN traffic, or do you use the other switches, you know, shared between for other traffic?
Okay, sure. So in our configuration, we're using a pair of 10 gig links for each host and sharing vSAN and VM data traffic within those 10 gig links. We have vSAN traffic primarily pinned to one of the other of those links and VM data traffic pinned to the other, but then they can operate in failover. That's our configuration. We're monitoring our network capacity very closely, including using to try to get some insight into what our network capacity utilization is. But as of now, we found that setup has been sufficient for our capacity. We ordered all of our vSAN ready nodes with an additional pair of 10 gig connections, forward looking in case we needed to in the future additional pair of dedicated 10 gig links for our vSAN traffic. That's a capability that we kind of have in our back pocket. Did that answer what you were?
Anything else? All right, well, great. Well, appreciate it. Michael, thank you again for coming to present, and enjoy the rest of the show. Please don't forget to fill out your surveys.